When Celeste hurls her past into the sea, she never expects it to return, let alone in the hands of a stranger who might just hold her future. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The evening. Sky turned orange as the sun began to set over Cape May, New Jersey. The wedding reception was still in full swing, but Celeste Ward couldn't bear to watch another minute of it. She slipped away from the beachfront venue, her blue bridesmaid, dress catching the breeze as she made her way down to the shoreline. At 29, Celeste had imagined this day much differently. Just a year ago, she was supposed to be the bride, not a bridesmaid watching her ex-fiancé marry someone else. Darren Collins had left her 2 weeks before their wedding, claiming he'd found his true soulmate in Vanessa, the yoga instructor he'd met at his gym. Now Celeste stood alone at the water's edge, watching waves crash against the sand. The wedding music drifted faintly from the distance. She twisted the ring on her right hand, the engagement ring she'd never returned, the simple band with the small diamond that once represented all her hopes and dreams. "What a joke," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the ocean. In one swift motion, Celeste pulled the ring from her finger. She stared at it for a moment, remembering the day Darren had placed it there, how they'd made plans for a future that would never happen. Then with all her might, she flung it into the waves. "Good riddance," she said, not bothering to wipe away the single tear that rolled down her cheek. She turned and walked away, feeling lighter somehow. What Celeste didn't see was how the tide immediately began carrying the ring back to shore, nestling it inside a large scallop shell where it glinted under the fading sunlight. Cassian Hale woke up early the next morning in his father's beach house. At 32, he'd already built Hale Innovations into a tech empire worth billions. But money hadn't brought him peace, especially after his father's death 3 months ago. Richard Hale had walked out on Cassian and his mother when Cassian was just 10 years old. For 22 years, there had been nothing but birthday cards, with checks inside. No visits, no calls. Then, surprisingly, Richard had left Cassian his beach house in Cape May and a letter that Cassian still hadn't opened. Cassian pulled on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt before heading outside for his morning walk. The beach was empty this early, just how he liked it. The wind tousled his dark hair as he walked along the shoreline, hands in his pockets, mind full of questions about the father he barely knew. Something caught his eye, a flash of light from the sand where the waves were gently rolling in. He bent down and discovered a scallop shell with something inside. Picking it up, Cassian found himself holding a woman's ring. Not flashy or extravagant, but elegant in its simplicity. The morning sun had warmed the metal, making it feel almost alive in his palm. Turning it over, he noticed something engraved inside. CW and DC. "Someone lost their wedding ring," he murmured. He looked up and down the deserted beach, knowing. The owner was long gone. Cassian pocketed the ring and continued his walk. He couldn't explain why, but finding the ring felt significant somehow. Maybe it was because he'd spent the last 3 months dealing with his father's possessions, the tangible remains of a life he'd never been part of. This ring, too, was part of someone's story. He decided he would try to find its owner. "You did what?" Aunt Martha's voice echoed through the small bookstore. At 72, she was still sharp as a tack and didn't mince words. Celeste shelved another stack of romance novels before turning to face her aunt. "I threw it into the ocean. It felt right." Martha Ward shook her head, her silver bob swinging. "That ring was worth good money, Celeste. You could have sold it." "I didn't want to sell it, I wanted to be free of it." Celeste moved to the front window, adjusting the display of beach reads. Besides, it's done now. She had come to Cape May 3 months ago after the wedding was called off. Her Aunt Martha's offer to help run her bookstore Beach Reads had been a lifeline. The small coastal town was just what Celeste needed. A place to heal away from everyone who knew her as poor Celeste who got left at the altar. "Well, I hope it helped," Martha said, softening. "You know what would also help? Finishing that children's book you were working on." Celeste sighed. Before her life fell apart, she'd been illustrating a children's book about a lighthouse keeper who befriends a lost whale. Now the half-finished pages sat untouched in her apartment above the bookstore. Maybe someday, she said, then turned. As the bell above the door jingled, a middle-aged couple entered, looking for vacation reading. Celeste put on her best bookseller smile and pushed thoughts of rings and unfinished dreams aside. By afternoon, Cassian had visited 3 jewelry stores in downtown Cape May, asking if anyone recognized the ring's style or could identify its maker. No luck. At the 3rd store, the jeweler suggested he put up notices around town. Someone's probably missing it badly, the man had said. Now Cassian sat at a coffee shop, typing up a simple notice on his laptop. Found. Woman's ring on North Beach. Please describe to claim. He added his temporary local number, deliberately leaving out any mention of the engraving. That would be how he'd verify the true owner. As he sipped his coffee, Cassian wondered about CW and DC. Were they married? Engaged? Did they lose the ring accidentally? Or was there a story behind it landing in that shell? He couldn't explain his fascination with finding the owner. Maybe it was a welcome distraction from the task he was avoiding, going through his father's papers and finally reading that letter. His phone rang. It was Greg, his COO, calling for the 3rd time that day. "Greg, I told you, I'm taking a month off." "The company won't collapse without me," Cassian said after answering. "The Wilson contract is hanging by a thread, Cass. They want to speak with you personally. That's what they pay you for. Handle it." "But I'm not coming back yet," Cassian said firmly. "I need this time." After hanging up, he looked at the ring again. Whoever CW was, he hoped she had fewer complications in her life. Friday night was story time at Beach Reads. Celeste sat in the children's corner on a blue beanbag chair surrounded by a semicircle of kids. She held up a picture book about sea turtles, reading with animated expressions that made the children giggle. Martha watched from behind the counter, smiling at how natural Celeste was with the children. She wished her niece could see what she saw, a talented, loving woman with so much to offer. When the last child had left with their parent, Martha locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. "That was wonderful, dear. Those children adore you." Celeste began straightening the story corner. Kids are easy. They don't care if you've been dumped or if your life is a mess. They just want a good story. Speaking of stories, Nadine from the bakery told me there's a handsome stranger in town asking about a lost ring. Celeste froze. What? Some businessman staying at the old Hale place found a woman's ring on the beach and is trying to find the owner. Martha raised an eyebrow. "You don't think—" "No," Celeste said quickly. "The ocean is huge. What are the chances?" But a strange feeling settled in her stomach. The ring was supposed to be gone forever, swallowed by the sea, just like her old dreams. "Well, if it is your ring, maybe it's—" "A sign," Martha said with a wink. "The only sign I need is the one that says closed. I'm heading upstairs." Celeste kissed her aunt's cheek. "Need help opening tomorrow?" "No, you sleep in. You've earned it." Alone in her small apartment above the bookstore, Celeste made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window that overlooked the main street. She told herself there was no way her ring had somehow found its way back to shore. And even if it had, what did it matter? She'd thrown it away for a reason. Still, she couldn't help wondering about this stranger and the ring he'd found. Cassian had spent the day hanging notices around town, at the post office, grocery store, and several shop bulletin boards. He'd gotten a few calls already, but none could correctly describe the ring. Now, as evening settled over Cape May, he finally returned to his father's house. The place was too big for one person. 4 bedrooms, a spacious living room with ocean views, and a wraparound porch. It was tastefully decorated, but felt impersonal, like a high-end rental property rather than a home. He heated up a frozen dinner and took it to his father's office, where boxes of papers waited to be sorted. If he was going to understand why, his father had left everything to a son he'd abandoned. He needed to go through it all. The first box contained business records. His father had run a successful real estate development company. The second held old photographs. Cassian paused when he found one of himself as a child, sitting on his father's shoulders at a beach that might have been this very one. He couldn't remember the moment captured in the photo. What he remembered was his 10th birthday. when his mother told him Daddy wouldn't be coming home anymore. What he remembered was checking the mail every day for weeks, waiting for a letter that never came. His phone chimed with a text from Greg. Wilson signed. "No thanks to you, you owe me." Cassian put the phone down without responding. His company had consumed his life for the past decade. He'd built it from nothing, driven by a need to prove himself, perhaps to the father who hadn't wanted him. Now that father was gone, and Cassian was left with questions that might never be answered. He took the ring from his pocket and studied it again. CW and DC. Something about it touched him. The thought of someone caring enough to have those initials engraved, the mystery of how it ended up in the sea. Tomorrow, he decided, he would check out some of the local businesses he hadn't visited yet. Someone in this small town must know who the ring belonged to. Little did he know that just a few blocks away, Celeste Ward was finally falling asleep, dreaming of oceans and lost things finding their way back to shore. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Beach Reads as Celeste arranged a new display of summer novels. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up to see a tall man with dark hair enter the bookstore. Something about him made her pause. Maybe it was his confident stride, or the way his eyes immediately took in every detail of the shop. "Good morning," she said, putting on her professional smile. "Can I help you find something?" Cassian Hale hadn't planned to visit a bookstore today, but the cheerful storefront had caught his eye during his morning walk. Now, facing the pretty woman with auburn hair and warm brown eyes, he was glad he'd stopped in. "Just browsing," he said. "I'm staying in town for a while and needed something to read." "Well, you've come to the right place," Celeste said. "Any particular interests? History, maybe, or local stories?" She led him to a section near the back of the store. "Cape May has a rich history. This one's my favorite, all about the old lighthouse and the families who kept it running." Their fingers brushed as she handed him the book, and both felt an unexpected jolt. Celeste quickly pulled her hand away. "Thanks," Cassian said, finding himself strangely tongue-tied. He was used to commanding boardrooms and closing million-dollar deals, but something about this bookstore woman had him off balance. "I'm Celeste. By the way, I run the store with my aunt. Cassian, I'm taking some time off work." He deliberately left out his last name and position. People treated him differently when they knew he was CEO of Hale Innovations. "Well, Cassian, feel free to look around. I'll be at the counter if you need anything else." As she walked away, he couldn't help noticing the grace in her movements, despite a sadness in her eyes that seemed familiar somehow. It was the same sadness he saw in his own reflection these days. Martha entered the bookstore just as Cassian was paying for 3 books. "My goodness, we don't often get customers who buy hardcovers these days," she said, eyeing the man curiously. "Aunt Martha, this is Cassian. He's staying in town for a while," Celeste said, bagging the books. Martha's eyes widened slightly. "Not at the old Hale place by any chance?" Cassian nodded, surprised. "Yes, actually. It was my father's house." "You're Richard Hale's son?" Martha looked him up and down. "I knew your father. Not well, but Cape May is a small town." "Martha knows everyone and everything in Cape May," Celeste explained with a fond smile. "So it's like having a walking, talking town newspaper. I just pay attention," Martha said. Then, casually, "I heard you found something on the beach. A ring, was it?" Celeste tensed behind the counter. "Yes," Cassian said, not noticing her reaction. "I'm trying to find the owner. It seems important." "How thoughtful," Martha said, giving Celeste a meaningful look that Cassian missed entirely. "Well, good luck with your search. And Celeste, don't forget we have the book club tonight. Mr. Cassian, you're welcome to join us if you enjoy discussion." "About romantic mysteries." "Thank you, but I have some work to catch up on," he said. Looking at Celeste, he added, "Maybe I'll stop by again tomorrow. I read quickly." After he left, Martha turned to Celeste with a mischievous smile. Well, well, well. Don't start, Aunt Martha. I didn't say a word, dear, but you have to admit he's handsome and clearly interested in more than just books." Celeste rolled her eyes, but couldn't help glancing out the window as Cassian walked. Down the street, her stomach doing a little flip when he turned back to look at the store one more time. That evening, Cassian sat on the porch of his father's house. his house now, watching the sunset over the ocean. The ring sat on the small table beside him, catching the golden light. His phone buzzed with an email from Greg. Another crisis at the office, another problem they expected him to solve. For 10 years, his company had been his whole life. He'd pushed aside relationships, hobbies, even sleep, to build Hale Innovations. Now he wondered what it had all been for. His thoughts drifted to the bookstore woman, Celeste. There was something refreshing about her. She didn't know who he was, didn't want anything from him. When was the last time he'd had a normal conversation with someone who wasn't trying to impress him or get something from him? On impulse, he decided to return to Beach Reads the next day. Just to exchange one of the books for something different, he told himself. The next afternoon, a summer storm rolled in from the ocean. Rain pounded against the windows of Beach Reads as Celeste helped the last customers hurry out with their purchases. "Looks like we're closing early today," Martha said, watching the empty street outside. "No one's going to brave this weather. For a book." Just as they were about to lock up, the door burst open and Cassian rushed in, soaking wet. "Sorry," he said, dripping on the welcome mat. "I was walking back from the cafe when the storm hit." "You're drenched." Celeste grabbed a clean towel they kept for rainy days. "Here, dry off a bit." "I don't want to impose," Cassian said, though he gratefully took the towel. "Nonsense," Martha said. "We were just about to have some tea upstairs. Join us until the storm passes." Before Cassian could protest, Martha was ushering them both toward the back stairs that led to Celeste's apartment. "Aunt Martha," Celeste whispered urgently. "What are you doing?" "Being neighborly," Martha replied innocently. "Besides, I want to hear more about Richard's son. It's been years since anyone stayed at that house." Celeste's apartment was small but cozy, with bookshelves lining every wall and a bay window overlooking the main street. Rain streaked down the glass, creating a peaceful cocoon from the outside world. "I apologize for the mess," Celeste said, quickly gathering some sketches from the coffee table. "I wasn't expecting company." Cassian caught a glimpse of colorful drawings, a lighthouse, and what looked like a whale before she tucked them away. "Are those yours? They're good." "Just a hobby," she said dismissively. "Have a seat, I'll make tea." While Celeste busied herself in the small kitchen, Martha engaged Cassian in conversation. "So, you're going through Richard's things?" "That must be difficult." "It's complicated," Cassian admitted. "We weren't close. He was a complicated man," Martha nodded. "Kept to himself mostly, especially these last few years, but he always spoke highly of his son, the successful businessman." This surprised Cassian. "He talked about me?" "Oh yes. Showed me your picture. In the business magazine. Very proud he was." Celeste returned with a tray of tea and cookies, catching the end of their conversation. She noticed the confused look on Cassian's face, but didn't pry. For the next hour, as rain continued to pour, outside the three of them talked. Martha told stories about Cape May's history. Cassian shared travel anecdotes, carefully avoiding mentions of his wealth or position, and Celeste gradually relaxed, even laughing at his dry humor. "You never mentioned what you do for work," Celeste said during a lull in the conversation. "I'm in tech," he said vaguely, "but I'm taking a break right now." "That must be nice," she said, "taking a break." "It's necessary sometimes." He looked at her curiously. "What about you? Have you always been a bookseller?" A shadow crossed her face. "No, I was in marketing in Philadelphia. This is a recent change." Martha checked her watch and stood up. "Goodness, look at the time. I should head home before the next wave of this storm hits." She winked at Celeste. "Don't worry about opening tomorrow, dear. Take the morning off." Before either of them could protest, she was gone, leaving Celeste and Cassian alone in the apartment. "Your aunt is quite a character," Cassian said with a smile. "She's not subtle, is she?" Celeste shook her head. "I'm sorry if she made you uncomfortable." "Not at all. This is the most normal afternoon I've had in years." The rain continued to drum against the windows as they talked. Cassian found himself telling her about growing up without his father, about building his company from nothing, though he was careful not to name it. Celeste shared stories about her childhood in the suburbs, her love of art and books. mentioned their deepest wounds, his father's abandonment and recent death, her broken engagement. Yet somehow both sensed the other's pain and responded with gentle understanding. When the rain finally stopped, Cassian reluctantly stood to leave. "Thank you for the tea and conversation. It was nice." "It was," Celeste agreed, walking him to the door. She hesitated, then asked, "How's your search going for the ring's owner?" "Slow," he admitted. "But I'm not giving up. It feels important somehow." She nodded, a strange expression crossing her face. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Over the next 2 weeks, Cassian became a regular at Beach Reads. He'd stop by in the mornings with coffee for Celeste and Martha, browse the shelves and sometimes help with heavy deliveries or reaching high shelves. In the evenings, he and Celeste often walked along the beach, talking about books, art, and life. He told her about his difficult relationship with his father and his uncertainty about what to do with the house. She described her dreams of writing and illustrating children's books about the sea. Neither noticed Martha watching them with a satisfied smile, nor the whispers of the townspeople about the handsome stranger and the bookstore girl who seemed to be healing each other's hearts. "You should come for dinner tomorrow night," Cassian said one evening as they watched the sunset from the beach. "At the house, I've been practicing my cooking skills. Are you sure? I wouldn't want to impose, I'm sure." He looked at her, his eyes sincere. "The house feels too empty. It would be nice to have someone there who makes it feel warmer." Celeste felt her heart speed up. "Then I'd love to." When Celeste arrived at the Hale house the next evening, wearing a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, she was struck by its grandeur. 3 stories of Victorian architecture with a wraparound porch and stunning ocean views. It must have cost millions. "This was your father's house?" she asked, as Cassian welcomed her in. "Yes. And now mine, though I'm not sure what to do with it." He led her to the dining room where he'd set the table with candles and fresh flowers. "I hope you like pasta. It's one of the few things I can make without burning." The dinner was delicious, the conversation easy. Afterward, they moved to the living room with glasses of wine. "I've been going through my father's things," Cassian said, gesturing to boxes stacked in the corner. "Found some old photos you might find interesting, Cape May from the 1980s. As they looked through the album, their hands touched. This time, neither pulled away. Cassian looked at Celeste, at the way the lamplight illuminated her face, and felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Peace. Celeste felt it too, this unexpected connection with a man she barely knew. For the first time since Darren left her, she felt her heart opening to possibilities. "It's getting late," she said reluctantly. "I should probably go. I'll walk you home." Outside, the night was clear and warm. They walked slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. When they reached the bookstore, Cassian took her hand. "Celeste, His phone rang, interrupting the moment. He glanced at it with annoyance. "I need to take this. It's work." "Of course, thank you for dinner." As she headed upstairs, she could hear him speaking in a different tone, authoritative, commanding. "Greg, I told you to handle it. No, that's not acceptable. Tell the board I'll be on the call tomorrow morning." It was a side of him she hadn't seen before. She wondered how much of himself he was still keeping hidden. The next morning, Cassian was absent from his usual coffee delivery. By afternoon, Celeste was trying not to feel disappointed. She reminded herself that they barely knew each other, that he was just passing through town, that getting attached would only lead to more heartbreak. Just as she was closing up, Cassian appeared, looking tired but smiling when he saw her. "I'm sorry about last night," he said, "and for not coming by earlier. Work emergency." "It's fine, you don't owe me explanations. But I want to explain." He ran a hand through his hair. "I haven't been completely honest about who I am." Celeste felt a chill. The last time a man had said something like that to her, her world had fallen apart. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, Martha bustled in from the back room. "Celeste, dear, could you help me with something upstairs?" "Oh, hello, Cassian. Why don't you come back for dinner tonight? Around 7. I'd like that," he said, looking relieved at the interruption. To Celeste, he added, "We'll talk more then." After he left, Celeste turned to Martha. "What was that about?" "That, my dear, was saving you both from having an important conversation in a public place." Martha patted her cheek. trust your old. Can't. Some revelations are better over a good meal. Celeste wondered what revelation Cassian was planning to share, and how it would change whatever was growing between them. Celeste spent extra time getting ready that evening, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on a simple green dress that Martha had once said brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. She told herself it didn't matter what she wore, this wasn't a date. Cassian just needed to tell her something. Still, her hands trembled slightly as she applied a touch of lipstick. "You look lovely," Martha said when Celeste came downstairs, "and nervous." "I am nervous. What if he's married? Or a criminal on the run?" Martha laughed. "Oh, honey, he's neither of those things." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I did a little digging after I recognized his name. The Hale name isn't exactly unknown in business circles." Celeste frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Martha said, stirring a pot of stew on the stove, "that your Cassian is Cassian Hale, CEO of Hale Innovations, that tech company worth billions." "What?" Celeste sank into a kitchen chair. "That's impossible. Look him up if you don't believe me." Celeste pulled out her phone and quickly searched his name. Dozens of articles appeared, along with photos, of Cassian in business suits at tech conferences and charity galas. In every image, he looked more polished, more serious than the man she'd come to know these past weeks. Why wouldn't he tell me? She wondered aloud. Maybe for the same reason. "You haven't told him about the ring," Martha said gently. "Sometimes it's nice to be seen for who you are, not for your past or your position." The doorbell rang and Celeste took a deep breath. "Well, I guess we'll find out what he has to say." Dinner was a quiet affair at first. Cassian seemed distracted, and Celeste was too busy processing what she now knew about him to make easy conversation. Martha did her best to fill the silence with stories about the bookstore's most eccentric customers. Finally, as they finished their dessert, Martha excused herself. "Early day tomorrow. You two take your time." She winked at Celeste before disappearing. Into her bedroom, alone at last, Cassian looked at Celeste with serious eyes. "I need to tell you something about myself. You're the CEO of Hale Innovations," she said quietly. Surprise flickered across his face. "How did you know?" Martha figured it out. "The Hale name, the mentions of your company. She looked you up." Celeste pushed her dessert plate away. "Why didn't you tell me?" Cassian sighed. "Because when people find out who I am, everything changes. They either want something from me, or they treat me differently. With you, I just wanted to be normal." "I understand that," she said, thinking of how people had treated her after Darren left with pity or awkward curiosity. "But relationships can't be built on half-truths." "You're right." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm sorry." No more secrets. Celeste felt a pang of guilt. She still hadn't told him about the ring, her ring that he'd been searching for. "There's something else," Cassian continued. "The reason I'm in Cape May isn't just about my father's house. He left me a letter that I've been afraid to read. I think I'm finally ready, and I'd like you to be there when I do." The vulnerability in his eyes touched her. Despite her lingering hurt over his omission, she nodded. "Of course." The next day was Sunday, and the bookstore was closed. Celeste arrived at Cassian's house in the late morning, finding him on the porch with 2 cups of coffee and the sealed letter beside him. "I thought we could use this," he said, handing her a cup. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the waves crash against the shore. Finally, Cassian picked up the envelope. He gave this to his lawyer with instructions to deliver it after his death. "I've been carrying it around for 3 months. "What are you afraid it might say?" Celeste asked gently. "I don't know. An explanation for why he left? An apology? Or maybe nothing at all?" He turned the envelope over in his hands. "What if there's nothing in here that makes any of it make sense?" Celeste thought about her own unanswered questions, why Darren had left, why she hadn't been enough. Sometimes there aren't answers that make sense of the pain. Sometimes people just make choices that hurt us, and we have to find a way to live with that. Cassian looked at her, seeing the understanding in her eyes. "You've been hurt too." She nodded but didn't elaborate. This moment was about him, not her. With a deep breath, Cassian opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. As he read, Silently, Celeste watched emotions play across his face. Surprise, pain, and finally, a kind of peace. "He was sick," Cassian said after a long moment. "Terminal cancer, diagnosed right before he left us. He writes that he couldn't bear for my mother and me to watch him die, so he left instead." He laughed, but there was no humor in it, as if that was better somehow. "He thought he was protecting you," Celeste said softly. "By disappearing? By sending birthday cards with no personal message, just a signature and a check?" Cassian shook his head. "He says he bought this house to be near the ocean in his final years, that he regretted his choices but was too proud to reach out. And yet he left you everything. Yes? Along with this?" Cassian reached into the envelope and pulled out a small key. "He says it opens a safe deposit box at Cape May Bank. Everything else is explained there." Celeste squeezed his hand. "Do you want to go now?" He nodded, folding the letter carefully and putting it back in the envelope. "Will you come with me?" "Of course." The bank manager led them to a private room where the safe deposit box waited. With slightly shaking hands, Cassian inserted the key and opened it. Inside was another envelope thicker than the first, and a small velvet pouch. Cassian emptied the pouch first. Out fell a woman's diamond ring, clearly an antique. "My mother's ring," he said in wonder. "She told me it was lost years ago." The envelope contained dozens of photographs, Cassian as a baby, as a toddler, as a young boy. School pictures, sports team photos, even newspaper clippings about his early business success. "He kept track of me," Cassian said, his voice thick, with emotion. All these years, there was also a journal filled with entries addressed to Cassian. The final entry, dated just weeks before Richard Hale's death, read, "My son, I have made many mistakes in my life, but none greater than leaving you. I hope someday you can understand, if not forgive. Everything I have is yours now, including this house where I've watched the same ocean you loved as a boy. Look for answers in the tide. Some things that are lost find their way back to shore." Celeste felt tears in her eyes as she watched Cassian process his father's final words. The pain and regret were evident, but so was the love, flawed and imperfect, but real. "Let's go for a walk," she suggested, seeing how overwhelmed he was. "The beach always helps me think." They walked along the shoreline, shoes in hand, letting the cool water wash over their feet. Cassian was quiet, processing everything he'd learned. Celeste gave him the space he needed, simply being present beside him. As the afternoon wore on, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. "Looks like another storm coming," Celeste said, glancing at the sky. "We should head back," Cassian agreed. They were halfway to his house when the rain began, gentle at first, then quickly turning into a downpour. They ran the rest of the way, laughing despite being soaked by the time they reached the porch. "You're drenched," Cassian said, looking at Celeste's dripping clothes. "Let me get you something dry to wear." Inside, he disappeared upstairs and returned with a soft sweater and sweatpants. "The bathroom's down the hall. There are clean towels in the cabinet." When Celeste emerged, warm and dry in clothes that smelled like him, she found Cassian in the pour. "Kitchen making hot chocolate. Your coat's pretty wet," she said, noticing his jacket hanging on a chair. "Do you want me to hang it up somewhere?" "Sure, there's a coat rack by the door." As Celeste picked up the jacket, something fell from the pocket and clinked against the hardwood floor. She bent to retrieve it, and her heart stopped. In her palm lay her ring, the one she'd thrown into the ocean on the night of Darren's wedding. The one with her and Darren's initials engraved inside. CW and DC. She was still staring at it when Cassian came in with 2 steaming mugs. "Celeste, what's wrong?" She held up the ring, her hand trembling. "This is mine." Cassian's eyes widened in recognition. "You're CW?" "Celeste Ward," she confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. "And DC is Darren Collins, my ex-fiancé." She looked at him accusingly. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" "That it was your ring. I didn't know until this moment, I swear. But you've been looking for the owner all this time. You put up notices around town." "Yes, because I found it on the beach and wanted to return it. I had no idea it was yours." He set the mugs down and took a step toward her. "Celeste, please believe me." She wanted to. The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable, but her mind was racing with questions and doubts. "The night we met at the bookstore," she said slowly. "You weren't just browsing, were you? You were asking around town about the ring." "Yes," he admitted, "but that was coincidence. I had no idea you were connected to it. And all this time, our walks, our talks, dinner, you never once mentioned the initials in the ring. I kept that detail private to verify the true owner." He ran a hand through his damp hair in frustration. "Celeste, think about it. If I'd known it was your ring, why wouldn't I have just given it back to you?" The logic of this penetrated her swirling thoughts. He was right. If he'd known, he would have returned it. "How did it end up in the ocean?" he asked gently. Celeste sank into a chair, the ring still in her palm. "I threw it away, the night of Darren's wedding to someone else." Understanding dawned on Cassian's face. "The night before I found it. Yes, I was a bridesmaid." She laughed bitterly. "Can you believe that? He left me 2 weeks before our wedding for his yoga instructor, and then had the nerve to ask me to be in their wedding party. And you agreed? I thought it would show everyone I was fine, that I'd moved on." She shook her head at her own foolishness. "After the reception, I went down to the beach and threw the ring as far as I could into the water. And somehow it found its way back to shore, in a shell like it was meant to be found. By you," she added softly. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. The coincidence, or fate, of their connection through this small circle of metal seemed too significant to ignore. "May I?" Cassian asked, holding out his hand. Celeste hesitated, then placed the ring in his palm. He examined it closely, then looked at her with warm eyes. "This ring found its way back from the sea. I found my way back to my father's house, and somehow in this small town, we found each other." He placed the ring gently on the table between them. "I don't think that's coincidence, Celeste." She felt tears welling in her eyes. "I've been hurt before. So have I," he said. "My father's abandonment, relationships that failed because I was too focused on proving myself. I've built walls too." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside, a different kind of tempest was calming. Celeste looked at the ring that had once symbolized a broken promise, then at the man who had found it, and perhaps found her too. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too," he admitted. "But I'm more scared of letting you walk away." He reached across the table and took her hand, and this time neither of them pulled away. The weeks that followed were the happiest Celeste had known in a long time. She and Cassian settled into a comfortable rhythm, mornings at the bookstore, afternoons exploring Cape May, and evenings on his porch watching the sunset. The ring sat in a small dish on Cassian's mantel, a reminder of how they'd found each other. "It's strange," Celeste said one evening as they prepared dinner together in his kitchen. "A few months ago, that ring represented everything I'd lost. Now when I look at it, I feel something different." "What do you feel?" Cassian asked, pausing from chopping vegetables. "Hope, I think." She smiled up at him. "It's like the ring had to go through the ocean and back to wash away the old meanings." He leaned down and kissed her softly. "I like that idea." Their relationship deepened with each passing day. Cassian shared more about his company and the pressure he'd been under for years. Celeste finally told him the full story of Darren's betrayal and how it had shattered her confidence. "He told me I wasn't ambitious enough," she admitted one night as they walked along the moonlit beach. "That I was wasting my talent on children's books that might never get published." "He was wrong," Cassian said firmly. "I've seen your work, Celeste. It's beautiful and heartfelt. Any child would be lucky to read your stories." His faith in her made something long dormant stir in Celeste's heart. She found herself sketching again, completing the pages of her lighthouse story that had gathered dust for so long. As July turned to August, however, reality began to intrude on their idyllic bubble. Greg called more frequently with company emergencies. That couldn't be handled without Cassian. Though he tried to manage things remotely, the strain was beginning to show. "You need to go back, don't you?" Celeste asked one morning when she found him hunched over his laptop at 5 a.m., dark circles under his eyes. "Just temporarily," he assured her. The Wilson contract is falling apart, and there's a potential acquisition that needs my personal attention. I understand, she said, though her heart sank at the thought of him leaving. Your company needs you. Just for a week, 2 at most, he promised, pulling her into his arms. Then I'll be back. And what then, Cassian? Will you commute between Cape May and New York every time there's a crisis? Your life is there, your company, your apartment, everything you've built. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. We'll figure it out, together. The day before his departure, Cassian took Celeste to a fancy restaurant in the next town over. He seemed nervous throughout dinner, checking his phone repeatedly and fumbling with his napkin. Is everything okay? She finally asked. Yes, just some last-minute work things. He reached across the table for her hand. Celeste, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Finding you, it changed everything. For me too, she said softly. I know we haven't known each other long, but when it's right, it's right. He squeezed her hand. Come with me to New York. She blinked in surprise. What? Just for the 2 weeks. You could see the city, visit some publishers with your book, and we wouldn't have to be apart. Celeste felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Joy at his desire to keep her close, fear of stepping into his world of wealth and corporate power, and uneasiness about leaving the safe haven she'd built in Cape May. I don't know, Cassian. The bookstore. Martha said she can manage for a couple of weeks. I already asked her. You discussed this with my aunt before asking me. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I wanted to make sure it was possible before suggesting it. Something about this bothered Celeste. The way he'd planned it all out, made arrangements, assumed she would agree. It reminded her too much of Darren, who had always made decisions for them both, certain he knew what was best. I need to think about it, she said finally. His disappointment was obvious, but he nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. Cassian left for New York the next morning with a lingering kiss and a promise to call every day. Celeste threw herself into work at the bookstore, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. You're moping, Martha observed on the third day. Why didn't you go with him? It's complicated. Love usually is. Martha shelved a stack of romance novels. But it's worth figuring out. What if we're too different? He's a CEO of a billion-dollar company. I'm a small-town bookseller with a half-finished children's book. And yet, when you're together, those differences don't seem to matter. Martha gave her a knowing look. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out if that can last in the real world. The real world. Their relationship had developed in a bubble, a beautiful, peaceful bubble away from their normal lives. What would happen when that bubble burst? A week passed, then another. Cassian called daily as promised, but the calls grew shorter as his work demands increased. The Wilson contract was saved, but the acquisition had complications. His 2-week trip stretched to 3. I'm sorry, he said during a late-night call. Things are crazy here. The board is pushing back on some of my decisions, and the press is running wild with speculation. It's okay, Celeste said, though it wasn't. I understand. Do you? Because sometimes it feels like you're pulling away. She sighed. I'm trying not to. But Cassian, this is your real life, the meetings, the deals, the pressure. Cape May was just a break from all that. No, he said firmly. Cape May is where I found what really matters. You are what matters, Celeste. His words warmed her heart, but doubt still lingered. How could she fit into his world? Would she always feel like an outsider? That night, Celeste couldn't sleep. She went downstairs to the bookstore and pulled out her finished manuscript, the story of the lighthouse keeper and the whale. For the first time in months, she felt a surge of pride in her work. Whatever happened with Cassian, she had created something meaningful, something true. The next morning she made a decision. She would go to New York. Not just for Cassian, but for herself, to face her fears and see if their love could exist. Outside the bubble of Cape May, Martha was thrilled when Celeste told her, "Hey, it's about time. I've already called Mrs. Henderson to help with the store. Now go pack." As Celeste was packing, her phone rang. It wasn't Cassian, but a New York number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Celeste Ward?" a woman's professional voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Meredith Banks from Horizon Children's Publishing." We received your manuscript and illustrations for The Lighthouse Keeper's Friend from Mr. Hale, and we're very interested in discussing publication. Celeste froze. Mr. Hale sent you my book? Yes, about 2 weeks ago. He spoke very highly of your work. We'd love to meet with you if you're going to be in New York anytime soon. After arranging a meeting for the following week, Celeste hung up, emotions swirling. Cassian had sent her book to publishers without telling her. Was it a thoughtful gesture or another example of him making decisions for her? She called him immediately. You sent my book to publishers, she asked when he answered. There was a pause. I wanted to surprise you. Are you mad? I don't know what I am, she admitted. It's a big step to take without asking me. I know, and I'm sorry. I just saw how talented you are, and I thought if I could help the small-town girl with her cute little hobby. That's not fair, he said, hurt evident in his voice. I believe in you, Celeste. I thought you'd be happy. She sighed, conflicted. I am happy about the interest, but Cassian, relationships are about partnership, not one person steering the ship. You're right, he said after a moment. I should have asked. I'm used to taking charge, making things happen. It's hard to step back sometimes. His honesty disarmed her. I'm coming to New York, she said. Tomorrow. I just booked a train ticket. Really? His voice brightened. Stay with me. I have plenty of room. No, she said firmly. I need my own space to think. Martha has a friend with an apartment in the village. I'll stay there. There was disappointment in his silence, but then, I understand. Can I at least pick you up at the station? I'd like that. New York City was exactly as overwhelming as Celeste remembered. Noise, crowds, energy. Everything Cape May wasn't. Cassian met her at Penn Station, looking both familiar and strange in his tailored suit and tie. You look different, she said as he embraced her. Good different or bad different? Just different. More like your photos in the business magazines. He grimaced. I hate those photos. They never show me smiling. That's because you never smile in them, she teased, feeling some of the tension ease between them. He helped her get settled in the small but charming apartment belonging to Martha's friend, then took her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant, where the maitre d' greeted him by name. Mr. Hale, your usual table is ready. Celeste felt out of place in her simple dress among the designer-clad patrons, but Cassian seemed oblivious to her discomfort, ordering expensive wine and speaking confidently about dishes she'd never heard of. Is something wrong? He asked when he noticed her picking at her food. This isn't me, Cassian, she said quietly. The five-star restaurants, the special treatment, I feel like I'm playing dress-up. His face fell. I wanted to impress you. You already impressed me by being yourself. The man who reads history books and makes slightly burned pasta. The man who walks barefoot on the beach and listens, really listens when I talk. Understanding dawned in his eyes. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Taking control instead of asking what you want. She nodded. What do you want, Celeste? Right. Now what would make you happy? She thought for a moment. Honestly? A hot dog from that stand we passed in the park, eaten on a bench while watching people go by. Cassian smiled, a real smile, not his CEO face, and signaled for the check. Then that's exactly what we'll do. The next week was a blend of highs and lows. Celeste's meeting at Horizon Publishing went wonderfully. They loved her book and offered a 2-book contract. She floated out of their offices, feeling validated in a way Darren had never allowed her to feel. Meanwhile, Cassian struggled to balance work and their time together. Twice he had to cancel dinner plans due to last-minute meetings. On the occasions they did spend together, he often seemed distracted, checking his phone for messages from Greg or worrying about stock prices. This is my fault, he admitted one evening as they walked through Central Park. I've let the company become my whole identity. I don't know how to step back. Maybe you don't have to step back, Celeste suggested. Maybe you just need to make room for other things too. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Like us? Yes, like us. But also like yourself. The real Cassian, not just the CEO. He took her hands in his. I want to find balance, but I need your help, Celeste. I need you to tell me when I'm slipping back into old patterns. I can do that, she promised. As long as you listen, I will, always. He kissed her softly. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. At my place, I'll cook. Now that I have to see, she laughed. Cassian's penthouse apartment was as luxurious as she'd expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But he'd made efforts to make it feel homier. Flowers on the table, books scattered on the coffee table, and delicious smells coming from the kitchen. "You're actually cooking," she said in surprise. "I've been practicing," he admitted. "Though I did order backup from the Italian place downstairs, just in case." The evening was perfect. Simple food, easy conversation, and a comfort between them that had been missing since he left Cape May. After dinner, they sat on his balcony with glasses of wine, watching the city lights. "I've been thinking," Cassian said, taking her hand. "About us, about the future." Celeste's heart quickened. "What about it? I don't want to choose between my company and you, and I don't want you to have to choose between your life in Cape May and me." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we can have both." He looked at her earnestly. "I can run most of Hale Innovations, remotely, coming to the city for important meetings and events. The rest of the time I could be in Cape May. You'd do that?" In a heartbeat. "These past months have shown me what really matters. The company is important to me, but you're essential." Celeste felt tears welling in her eyes. "What about my book deal? I'll need to be in the city sometimes too." "Then we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do, right?" The word partners warmed her heart, not one person steering the ship, but two people navigating together. "There's something else," Cassian said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box and Celeste's breath caught. "Before you panic," he said quickly, "this isn't what you think, or maybe it is, but not yet." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver chain with a familiar object hanging from it, her ring. "I thought maybe it could have a new meaning," he explained, "not as an engagement ring, but as a reminder of how we found each other, of second chances and new beginnings." Celeste took the necklace, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "It's perfect." He helped her fasten it around her neck, the ring resting just above her heart. "One day, when we're both ready, I'll give you a different ring," he promised. "One without any history but ours." 2 months later, on a crisp October morning, Celeste stood on the beach in Cape May. The water sparkled in the autumn sunlight, waves gently rolling onto the shore. She wore a simple white sweater against the chill, and her fingers absently played with the ring that hung around her neck. Cassian's plan had worked better than either of them expected. He spent 3 days, a week in New York, the rest in Cape May. Celeste traveled to the city once a month for meetings with her publisher. It wasn't always easy, but they were making it work day by day. The sound of footsteps on sand made her turn. Cassian approached, hands in the pockets of his jacket, smile warming his face when he saw her. "Contemplating another ocean sacrifice," he teased, nodding toward the ring she was touching. "Just thinking about how much has changed since I threw this away." She turned to face the water again. "I was so hurt, so angry that night. I thought I'd never trust anyone again." Cassian rapped, his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "And now? Now I'm glad the tide brought it back, glad you found it." She leaned back against him. "Glad you found me." They stood in comfortable silence, watching seagulls dive and soar above the waves. After a while, Cassian reached into his pocket and pulled something out. "I have something for you," he said, holding out his closed fist. Celeste held out her palm and he dropped a small, smooth stone into it, green with flecks of blue, polished by the sea. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about your ring, about us." She turned to face him. "What about us? I never thought I'd find someone who would make me want to slow down, to build a life outside of work. But then you came along, and everything shifted." Celeste felt her heart begin to race. "Cassian," he took the necklace in his fingers, gently lifting the ring from where it rested against her chest. "This ring has had quite a journey, from symbol of a broken promise to lost treasure to found connection. It brought us together," she whispered. "Yes, it did." He unclasped the necklace and slid the ring off the chain, holding it between his fingers. "I never thought I'd wear this again," he said, echoing her thoughts from months ago. You don't have to, he replied, unless you want a new story to go with it. Celeste reached out and took the ring from him, studying it in the morning light. The initials inside, CW and DC, no longer stung as they once had. They were just letters now, not a painful reminder. I never thought I'd wear this again, she said softly. You don't have to, he replied, unless you want a new story to go with it. She turned toward him, eyes shining with unshed tears and a question he hadn't quite asked. The tide rolled in, washing over their feet, then retreated, leaving the sand smooth and new. Cassian waited, patient as the sea that had brought them together, for her answer.